Hello, friends, family, fans? Get ready to not be like us. We just had the worst Paris trip in the history of Paris trips.
Yeah.
And we're going to give you some tips on some Airbnb host debacle that we had and how to avoid stuff like that. Or if you get yourself into something like that, how to hopefully get yourself back out of it.
Yeah.
Like we did, successfully. So let's get into it.
So tip 1, you're going to read your listing. Everyone reads their listing, right? So even if it says sleeps 2 to 4 people, you want to do the drop down and make sure that the price doesn't change when you add people.
It seems obvious, but put the correct number of people that are going to be staying at the Airbnb in
something we've never dealt with before. Never has been an issue. We've always been honest about how many people have stayed. This particular situation caused all of our drama and pain. So don't just read the listing and do the drop down. Also look for additional fees. That doesn't necessarily mean like you want your breakfast made. It could mean that there's an extra person.
In our case, it was people over 2 people will incur a charge of $34 per night.
So look in those 2 areas to see if something that might not seem like an extra fee to you might be an extra fee from the host.
Right. Tip number 2 is read the entire listing again and find out exactly what the host offers. If it isn't specifically in the listing, Airbnb tells us that they are not obligated to provide it. In our case, we, after having some heated arguments with our host, asked for more than 1 towel per person for our 5-night stay, which we thought was completely reasonable, and they refused. And Airbnb told us that if it's in the listing as 1 towel, that's what you get.
It might seem like common sense, like extra toilet paper and extra towel might be something that when you're there, you might be like, oh, can I have it? They are not obligated in any way, shape, or form to give you seemingly necessary things.
Yeah, and tip 2B could be ask questions before booking. Once again, we had a terrible trip, and it's somewhat due to our own negligence because we were rushing. We
never experienced somebody like this before.
We forgot to book a place to stay and needed to do it last minute, so we did it very quickly and to our peril.
Tip number 3. So when you're booking, look for somebody who seems like they've been around a while, maybe has some reviews and stuff. We're not saying that you can't trust somebody with no reviews or few reviews, because everyone has to start out, and when you start out, you don't have reviews. But we learned from this situation that our particular host didn't have any reviews because she likes to shut down her account and reinstate it with a new name and a new photo so she doesn't get bad reviews. Or maybe she does run a scam, we're not sure. But
she was going to get in trouble with Airbnb and they were going to kick her off the platform. And she said, you know what, I'm going to take a break from hosting and I'll remove myself. So she deleted her profile, and then the next day we check and it's all listed again. And we reported it and she got removed from Airbnb again. And we're checking every day, believe us. But
yeah, you definitely don't want this woman to torture you on your trip to Paris, because she absolutely ruined our 5-night stay. She took away 2 nights, and that's why we didn't get to post last week, and we're really sorry about that, but we're back on track.
4 is notify Airbnb immediately, like the second something goes wrong. If you've already checked in, it really needs to be within 24 hours of check-in, or you're going to have a hard time getting anything done through Airbnb. We were kind of lucky, I guess you call it lucky, that she went off the rails before we even checked in. So we notified Airbnb like half an hour after we booked, because it
felt off.
Yeah, it went south fast. And so if you have a problem,
don't feel fussy, just do it.
Yeah.
Get it on the record that something was wrong.
Also, make sure to keep all your communication with the host or the guest, if you are a host, on Airbnb's platform, so they have a reference point. Should something go wrong, they can say, yes, we see that you offered this reconciliation or
Towel.
yes, yeah, right. But that helped us a lot in our talks with Airbnb, because they could see that we were actively trying to resolve the situation, and she was just not having it.
Yeah, you keep your cool.
Absolutely.
Tip number 5. So we were stuck with the Airbnb. Airbnb itself wasn't helping us, so we were paying for it. We were either going to need to cancel and pay for it, or pay $200 more for Atlas. So we figured we'll make the best of it. We could do laundry, we could get work done there. We'll just pay for it and also get a hotel that we can all comfortably be in without this crazy woman hovering over us. So that being said, we decided we didn't want to meet her inside of the apartment, and we had asked to meet in a public place, meaning downstairs in the front of her building. It's Paris, so it wasn't like a house. This is an apartment on a public street, or the restaurant next door to her. So she never met us, which again makes us wonder if
ultimately, that was the straw that broke the camel's back for Airbnb, was that she never met us for check-in. She had gotten so riled up during the whole situation that she refused to meet us to exchange the key, and really,
because we didn't agree to pay her money, and Airbnb said it's very clear that these people are
I know you guys don't have a lot of context, and we'll go into more detail about what happened.
We're going to tell you the whole story. We just want to get our tips out.
Yeah, right now it's just tips, but it'll make more sense later. But really what it was she kept insisting that there were going to be 3 people at the place, but we had already rented a hotel, and so we were never going to stay at this lady's house. So we kept saying, there's not going to be 3 people staying. I will not pay the extra money. And she said, you're 3. You will pay.
Yes. And she said, you will pay or you will cancel. And we said, no, we'll just use it as like an office and a place to do laundry. And she didn't believe us. And eventually Airbnb was like, you have to give them the key. And she didn't. So anyway, if somebody feels off, you don't have to meet them inside the building. Ask to meet outside or in a well-lit area. We didn't want to put our child in a scenario where this woman might yell at us or act out or do something silly.
It had gotten to the point.
It had gotten there.
I think there might have been a physical altercation. So
not by me.
No, of course not. I'm talking about like her lunging at us. So.
Yeah, she seemed pretty batty, and she was not very fond of Americans, and she was very expressive about it. So. Yeah. Meet in public. Sure. Yeah, definitely meet in public.
Tip number 6. Tip number 6 is be absolutely relentless with Airbnb. They're a business. They're there to make money. They don't like giving refunds. It's not what they do best. But they do actually have pretty good customer service if you get the right person. So the first part of this tip is, if you get a customer service representative at the bottom level, like the basic you call up and the first person you get, if you're not clicking with them, if they're not listening to your complaint, just hang up the phone.
Don't give them your info.
Yeah, hang up the phone and call back and get another representative that seems to be taking you more seriously. That's going to save you a ton of time. We spent about 6 hours dealing with a woman who was just never going to help us and never did help us, and we needed to escalate it to a conflict resolution person. And that's the next step of it, is that these people, just like any job, they're on shifts, so you're going to get different people in different times of the day, and once you get assigned a conflict resolution person, you really want to stick with them through the whole process so they stick with the story, and people aren't having to go back and check notes and make sure that everything is being taken care of the same way.
Don't trust that they're thoroughly going to read the notes. You have to remind them of what is happening and where you left off. Like, by the time we got to somebody that was helping us, they were like, this shouldn't have taken this long to get to me. You're literally stranded outside of the apartment.
It took us 12 hours to get to the right person, and then about 4 hours to actually fix it.
Yeah.
So it should have taken.
So our 5 days in Paris, we now spent 2 on the phone with Airbnb. So.
Yeah.
Tip number 7. Know your rights. So we didn't know our rights until we got to conflict resolution, and I wish we had known what could or would have happened much earlier on. And it's pretty straightforward. I would not recommend trying to scam the system to make this happen in your benefit. It was very stressful and it ruined our trip. So this is not like hacks on how to get around the system. This is if something...
No, these are legitimate gripes.
This is like if something is really wrong. Our person happened to be aggressive and racist and not let us in, and that's why we wound up where we wound up. So don't try to manipulate or ruin the system. Try to play fair so it doesn't get ruined for everyone. The thing that you get back in the situation where somebody doesn't let you in is we got a full refund. They paid for the first night of our hotel, and they gave us 10% of what we paid on our Paris stay for Airbnb towards our next stay. It didn't feel worth it. I felt like more care should have been put into it because it did take 2 days and we did have to fight. We also learned that you can't do a chargeback on a credit card because, or at least our credit card, would follow Airbnb's policy. We
called the credit card and we said, hey, we're not having any luck with Airbnb at the moment. Can we just do a chargeback on this? And they said, one, it was a pending charge and they couldn't do anything until it was a cleared charge. And secondly, that if the cancellation policy was being followed to the T, which technically it was, that they would be following the cancellation policy and we would be doing nothing.
So until she actually started throwing racist statements at us and then not showing up, we weren't technically in the right. We just felt uncomfortable and that this wasn't going to be a pleasant stay. She didn't actually do anything wrong according to Airbnb's terms until she...
Let's clarify a bit, because in the beginning, when we wanted to be 3 people, she was totally correct. We should have paid the extra money. But we decided that we would do it a different way and we would not be 3 people. And so she was not due the money, and she refused to believe that we were going to not be 3 people. So she was not in the right at the end, and we were not going to pay her the extra money, and she would not let us in without paying it. And so that's
where the argument was. She was basically saying, you can't come to my country and change the rules, and that's where it kind of got messy, and we weren't looking to do that. We were just looking to do laundry. So anyway, let's get on to tip number 8.
Right. Tip number 8, and our last tip, is that when you are having an issue with the host, you can report them, and if they're sending racist or homophobic or sexist comments to you, you can flag those comments. You can block the conversation so they can't speak with you anymore. In our case, we were speaking to Airbnb about it, and they said flag these comments and we'll put them under review. We had to do everything separately, so every comment that that broke their policies and were grossly inappropriate, we flagged, and then we flagged her profile. And
so speaking to customer care on the phone or chat isn't enough. You actually have to go in
and flag each of those individual things. And the reason that we did that was, one, because it was very inappropriate, and secondly, because when we were done with Airbnb and it had already been resolved, she continued to harass us, which ultimately led to her Airbnb demise. She no longer lists on there.
Yes, and we learned that you can block somebody. Airbnb told us how to block somebody in the chat. It's pretty simple. So if somebody is badgering you, you can stop communication. Although you might want to let them go on for a little bit to help your case.
If you can take it, let them dig their own grave.
Yeah.
But that's it. The 8 tips to get you through a shady Airbnb situation. Yeah. And we'll go into more detail about exactly what happened later. But we thought these were important enough to put out there right now.
Yeah, and we'll type it all up in the post to kind of like clarify some of the things that might seem a little bit confusing. But we hope that this is helpful to somebody and that you don't get stranded on the street in Paris.
Yeah, and even though some of these were obvious, they should be helpful in the future.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.